I bid you welcome.
To a new world of gods and monsters.
How do you like that, eh?
Even a man who's pure at heart and says his prayers by night may become a wolf when the wolfbane blooms and the moon is full and bright.
I love dead, hate living.
It's a perfect night for mystery and horror. The air itself is filled with monsters.
Here then is a picture that will live forever. Chaney's portrayal of Quasimodo, the Hunchback, is superb, a marvel of sympathetic acting. Chaney, in some miraculous way, awakens within us a profound feeling of sympathy and admiration for this most unfortunate and physically revolting human being. Motion Picture World's review sums things up nicely. Here we are, over a century later, still celebrating the spectacle of Lon Chaney and the Hunchback of Notre Dame. Considered by many to be the first Universal monster film, Hunchback may be much more of a historical fiction melodrama, yet Chaney's Quasimodo is monstrous in all the perfect ways. I'm Ian the Wolfman, and this is the Monster Archives. Long before the film was produced or shot, silent-era movie star Lon Chaney was the industry favorite to play Quasimodo. Daily publication, Film Daily, stated it was essentially common knowledge that Chaney wanted to play the role of the Hunchback, and even claimed that he had considered organizing a company to make the film abroad. Chaney even acquired the rights to produce the film in 1921, and had been actively negotiating the production with Universal Studios. Evidence of Chaney's seriousness included plans to work on the production abroad with a German studio, the Chelsea Pictures Company. In April of 1922, Chelsea Pictures had announced that Lon Chaney would star as Quasimodo, and Alan Crosland, noted for having directed the first feature film using spoken dialogue, The Jazz Singer, in 1927, would direct the picture. The film failed to materialize, and the company seems to have disappeared without a trace. As stated last episode, it was Universal's head of production, Irving Thalberg, who convinced studio president and founder, Carl Laemmle, to move forward with production of The Hunchback of Notre Dame. Thalberg had previously worked with Lon Chaney and Todd Browning, who may have helped shape Thalberg's vision. Universal Weekly, the house publication of Universal Studios, formally announced the production of Hunchback in August of 1922. The following issue stated that the Universal Scenario Department was working on the continuity and that preliminary plans for the sets were being drafted. In September of 1922, Universal Weekly announced Lon Chaney's intentions for the studio to have him act in his final cripple role, following the successes of both The Miracle Man for Paramount in 1919 and The Penalty for Goldwyn Pictures in 1920. Chaney's ownership of the film rights allowed him contractual latitude for far more artistic approval and control of this production compared to that in previous ones. Thus, Chaney would serve as an uncredited de facto producer. Wallace Worsley, who had worked with Chaney on 4 previous films at Goldwyn, was the final choice for director. It is believed that Chaney was influential in the selection of Worsley. Michael Blake, a Lon Chaney scholar, states that Chaney's first choice for director was Erich von Stroheim. However, if you recall, Stroheim had been fired by Irving Thalberg before production on Hunchback had officially commenced. Universal Weekly announced Wallace Worsley pending approval from his then home studio Paramount as the likely director in late November 1922. The following issue confirmed Worsley's status as director, though such confirmation ran alongside an advertisement that stated Todd Browning would direct the film. Worsley had prior commitments at Paramount, directing 2 other feature films. Production on Hunchback was pushed back nearly a month to accommodate Worsley, while the second of the 2 films Worsley was to direct was eventually helmed by another director instead. Universal announced its intentions to recreate the Notre Dame Cathedral and the surrounding streets to the exact specifications of the period. Universal staff set about creating the Gallery of Kings, 35 statues, each 10 feet high, with intended likeness of the originals. The construction of the sets was estimated to take 6 months to complete. By the end of 1922, the screenplay was completed by Edward T. Lowe Jr. and Pearlie Poore Sheehan. Ultimately, the set for the film spanned some 19 acres, and the actual production required the services of 750 crew members. In January 1923, it was announced that film production began with the Court of Miracles setting. Shooting the Parisian underworld scene required a cast of some several hundred extras. The construction of the Notre Dame set and the street settings had not yet been completed. By the beginning of February, filming had moved to the Madame de Gondelaurier scenes. The production reportedly required 3,000 costumes for extras, requiring 6 weeks for the Universal costume department to complete. The night sequences, which took 2 months to film, were also a major headache and still holds the record for the largest number of electricians ever employed on one film, 105. Carpenters and masons constructed the cathedral set, which remained standing until destroyed by a fire in 1967. Wallace Worsley Jr., son of the director, said that many of the extras for the massive crowd scenes were recruited in downtown Los Angeles for $1 a night and meals. Among them, he claimed, were a good number of prostitutes who did a considerable sideline business on the sets. Universal also hired 50 Pinkerton detectives and put them among the crowd, and their job was to catch pickpockets and various other thieves among the extras. In March, Film Daily reported Worsley had traded in his megaphone for a radio and loudspeaker to direct the large crowd of extras for the scenes. Radio Digest stated that it was a $7,000 radio and loudspeaker setup, equivalent to $120,000 in 2022. Film Daily reported on June 8, 1923, that filming had been completed and that Universal had signed a contract to lease the Astor Theater for showing the film on September 2nd. A competition was held in 1923 by Universal Pictures through various photoplay music, which were stock silent music companies, to create the theme song for the film. The winner was Maurice Barron, whose characteristic reverie, The Chimes of Notre Dame, was used as the main theme. The original cue sheet to the film came with a copy of the piece for the piano with suggestion that it be used imperatively. At the beginning of 1923, Universal's accounts believed the cost of production would be between $750,000 and $1 million. The film ended up costing $1.25 million to produce and was in production from December 16, 1922 through June 8, 1923. It was the most expensive Lon Chaney film ever made. He was paid $2,500 per week salary, making close to $60,000, plus contract bonuses. It was the longest shoot of his career. Just like the 1831 novel by Victor Hugo, the film is set in 1482 Paris. Quasimodo, portrayed by Lon Chaney, is deaf, blind in one eye, and extremely malformed. Chaney's performance has been described as dog-like. The role propelled him to superstardom. In preparation for the role, Chaney held interviews with people who suffered from various physical deformities. His makeup was so masterful for the time that many viewers believe that Chaney truly appeared in real life as the character on screen. To create the look of Quasimodo, Chaney sculpted new features over his face with plasto, a soft, sticky wax used by morticians to repair the faces of bodies for viewing. A wire device in his mouth was used to further deform his jaw, and a set of false teeth made of a hard substance called gutta percha added to the effect. The makeup, reportedly, took 3 hours to apply. While it had been reported for years that the fake hump weighed up to 70 pounds, it is believed it weighed no more than 20. In addition to the hump, Chaney wore shoulder padding, as well as a special harness that kept him in a crouched position. The makeup allowed Chaney to utilize his emotions and facial features, as well as his impressive, nearly acrobatic physical abilities. Though professional strongman, Joe Bonomo doubled for Chaney in the dangerous scene where Quasimodo rope slides down the face of Notre Dame. The cast includes Patsy Ruth Miller as Esmeralda. Miller said that any direction she received during production came more from Chaney than from director Wallace Worsley. Norman Carey, referred to as the Clark Gable of the 1920s, portrayed Phoebus de Châteauperis. Kate Lester starred as Madame de Gondelaurier. Nigel de Bruyere played Don Claudio. Brandon Hurst played the treacherous Jahan. Ernest Torrance played Clopin, and Tolly Marshall played King Louis XI. Until her death in 2014, Carla Laemmle, niece of Carl Laemmle, who appeared in the opening scene of Dracula in 1931, was believed to have been the last surviving person to witness the making of the film. While Laemmle did not appear in the film, she lived with her family in a bungalow at Universal City and watched the filming on a few occasions. The Hunchback of Notre Dame premiered at the Astor Theater in New York City on September 2, 1923. Its wide release was 4 days later on September 6th. Its estimated gross was $3.5 million, an amazing amount for the silent era. Reception and reviews were mostly positive, especially in regards to the spectacle of the feature. Many reviews raved over the production, while others warned about the grim atmosphere and grotesque portrayal of Quasimodo. Exhibitor's Trade Review noted, "The Quasimodo of Lon Chaney is a creature of horror, a weird monstrosity of ape-like ugliness. Such a fantastically effective makeup as the screen has never known, and in all human probability will never know again." Indeed, Lon Chaney proved powerful. Here we are, over a century later, still celebrating his portrayal of Quasimodo. The only surviving prints of the film are 16mm show-at-home prints, distributed by Universal in the 1920s and 30s for home movie purposes. No original nitrate 35mm negatives or prints exist. Most video editions of the film are derived from the 16mm duplicate prints that were distributed by Black Hawk Films in the 1960s and 70s. In 1951, the film entered the public domain in the United States because the claimants neglected to renew its copyright registration in the 28th year after publication. While the film is available on DVD and Blu-ray, all existing prints, copied from the 16mm sources, are missing at least 15 minutes of footage that was in the original 1923 35mm release print. Before we wrap things up, a final feel-good story about Lon Chaney. While the film was in production, he and his wife Hazel adopted a dog, a wire-haired terrier named Roscoe from San Francisco. They renamed the dog Sandy. With Universal's latest Super Jewel a resounding success, and Lon Chaney now a superstar, it was time for the studio to utilize both the actor and grotesque character to, perhaps, even further extremes. But before we dive into 1925's The Phantom of the Opera, let's take a look at the man who brought the silent era monsters to life in America. Join us next episode as we showcase the man of 1,000 faces himself, Mr. Lon Chaney. This episode of the Monster Archives was written and produced by me, Ian Bates. For more on the Monster Archives, including scheduling updates and news, be sure to follow at Universal Studios Monsters on Instagram. And thank you for listening.